All right, so today we're taking a deep dive into the whole TikTok situation and its future here in the U.S.
Yeah.
I mean, you've probably seen the headlines, right? Oracle might be taking over. But there are a lot of concerns like national security worries and big tech companies kind of wrestling for control. And there's even a chance TikTok could get banned altogether.
Yeah, it's a really complex situation.
Yeah. So to help us break this down, we've got articles from NPR, CNBC, we've got TechCrunch in here, The Verge, and Reuters.
Great sources.
Yeah. So the goal of this deep dive, what we're trying to do here is really cut through all the noise and figure out what this potential Oracle deal actually means, especially for the people who use TikTok every day.
Exactly, because it's not as straightforward as it might seem at first glance.
Right.
It's not a typical, tech takeover. This is a really delicate balancing act. They're trying to address all those national security concerns, but at the same time, they don't want to just completely dismantle, one of the most popular apps out there.
So let's start by breaking down the basics of this deal. First of all, it's not a full-on acquisition.
Right. It's more of a partnership. What's being proposed is that Oracle would team up with some U.S. investors.
Okay.
And they would take control of TikTok's operations, but only in the U.S.
Okay, so U.S. operations only.
Yes. But here's where it gets really interesting. ByteDance, which is TikTok's Chinese parent company.
Right.
They wouldn't completely disappear. They'd still keep a minority stake in the company.
So they'd still have a little bit of say, a little bit of power.
Yeah, they'd still have a seat at the table, but they wouldn't be calling the shots. And this is a crucial part. The deal would give Oracle control over two key things: TikTok's algorithm and all of its data management. And that's really what's been causing all these concerns in Washington.
Right, because at the end of the day, it's not just about funny videos and dance trends, right?
Yeah.
It's about data. It's about the potential for things like data breaches and even like influence on what users are seeing.
Exactly.
Can you kind of unpack those concerns a little bit?
Well, you have to think about the power that comes with shaping the information flow.
Right.
The trends, even potentially political opinions of, millions and millions of Americans. That's what we're talking about here.
Yeah.
And that's what the U.S. government is really worried about.
Right.
They don't want a Chinese company having that level of influence. They're worried about data breaches. They're worried about the possibility of, even the Chinese government getting access to user data.
And this is not just like a theoretical worry, right? There's actually like a law in place that really puts the pressure on ByteDance.
That's right. A law was passed just last year. And it requires ByteDance to either sell off their stake in TikTok or face a complete ban in the U.S.
Wow.
So this is more than just business. This is a legal showdown.
So the stakes are high. Now, this isn't Oracle's first try at, getting involved with TikTok, right? I mean, remember back in 2020 when they tried to do that joint venture with Walmart?
Oh, yeah. That deal ultimately fell apart. But it seems like Oracle isn't giving up. They're really determined to have a role in TikTok's future, at least here in the U.S.
And it's not just Oracle, right? Weren't there other big companies kind of circling TikTok, like expressing interest?
Absolutely. Microsoft was definitely in the mix.
Right.
And there were other investors who were interested in getting a piece of the action.
So what makes Oracle the front runner? Is it just that they keep trying? Or is there something more to it?
Well, here's an interesting detail. Of all the companies who have expressed interest, Oracle's the only one that's actually had an official meeting with the White House about this deal.
Oh, wow.
So that kind of gives you a sense of how seriously they're being considered.
Yeah. So they're not just throwing their name out there. They're actually sitting down with the people who are making the big decisions.
Okay.
So to recap, we've got national security fears, a potential ban looming, big tech giants battling it out, and Oracle seemingly in the lead. This is complicated.
It is, and we're just getting started. The really crucial question is, what does all this mean for the millions of people who use TikTok in the U.S.? Like, what will the actual impact be on them? So we've talked a lot about, the politics and the money behind this potential deal. But now let's think about the people who are actually going to be affected by this, the TikTok users.
Yeah, I mean, millions of people use this app every single day to make videos, connect with friends, be entertained. So if this deal actually happens, what's going to change for them? Will they even notice a difference?
That's the big question, isn't it? And honestly, we don't have all the answers yet. But there are a few key areas where this deal could really have a big impact. And the first one is the algorithm.
The algorithm.
Okay.
That's basically like the brain of TikTok, right?
Exactly.
It's the thing that decides what videos you see.
It decides what trends take off, all of that.
Yeah.
And remember, this deal would give Oracle control over that algorithm. Now, they haven't said exactly what they plan to do.
Right.
But it's totally possible that we could see changes to the For You page. What kind of content gets prioritized.
So my For You page could look different, potentially, depending on what Oracle does with the algorithm.
Potentially, yeah.
Okay, that's big.
It's a big deal.
Now, what about data privacy? I mean, that's been a huge part of this whole story. Would this deal actually make things better? Would it ease those worries?
Well, that's definitely what the U.S. government is hoping for. Their thinking is if a U.S. company is overseeing that data,
right,
then there's less of a risk of that data ending up in the wrong hands.
But ByteDance would still have a minority stake.
Right.
So wouldn't that still give them some access?
Yeah, that's a valid point. And honestly, the specifics of how data access would work, they're still being worked out.
Yeah.
But the idea is that Oracle would put in place much stricter safeguards, more oversight.
Okay, so more transparency, more accountability.
Exactly.
Hopefully,
That'd be a good thing.
Yeah. For people who are concerned about their data, that would be a step in the right direction, for sure.
Definitely.
But beyond the algorithm and the data, are there any other changes that users might actually notice in the app itself?
It's possible. Think about features, content moderation policies.
Right.
Even just the design, the user interface, how the app looks and feels. Those could all change under Oracle.
So potentially it might be a slightly different TikTok experience, but maybe one that feels a bit safer, a bit more trustworthy, at least for U.S. users.
Potentially, yeah. But here's the thing to keep in mind. This whole deal is still really up in the air. There are a lot of hurdles to overcome before it's actually finalized.
Like what kind of hurdles?
Well, you've got regulatory approvals, the possibility of political pushback.
Right.
Legal challenges, privacy advocates might raise concerns, even other tech companies might try to interfere.
Wow, so it's like a high-stakes game of chess.
It is.
With a lot of powerful players.
A lot of moving parts.
Yeah. But even with all this uncertainty, one thing seems pretty clear. Whatever happens with this deal, it's going to have a ripple effect.
Absolutely.
It's going to be felt way beyond just TikTok itself.
This is not just about one app. This is about the future of data privacy, the growing power of Chinese tech companies, and, the whole relationship between governments and the tech industry.
So in a way, what's happening with TikTok is like a test case.
It is.
It's like a window into how these really complex issues are going to play out on a global scale.
Yeah, that's a great way to put it. And it raises a lot of interesting questions, like how are other countries going to respond to these kinds of situations?
Yeah.
Will we see more and more attempts to, regulate or restrict the flow of data across borders?
Right.
And what role are tech companies going to play in all of this?
These are questions that we're going to have to deal with as this whole story keeps unfolding.
Exactly. And speaking of unfolding, there's another layer to this that we haven't even talked about yet. Even if this deal goes through perfectly with no problems at all, there's still a big question.
What's that?
Will it actually work?
Oh, right. Will Oracle actually be able to keep TikTok running smoothly while also addressing those national security concerns?
Exactly. And that's a whole other can of worms.
So, we've talked about how this deal could affect users. We've talked about the bigger picture, but let's get real. Even if Oracle gets everything they need, can they actually make this work?
That's the million-dollar question.
Yeah.
And it's a huge challenge, both logistically and technically. I mean, we're not talking about just moving some servers and data around. We're talking about separating the very core of TikTok, the algorithm, the content moderation systems, the whole infrastructure.
It's like trying to do open-heart surgery while the patient is still running a marathon.
Exactly. And there are some real risks here. You could have glitches, data loss. The app could even become unusable for a while. And that could be devastating for TikTok, especially with competitors like Instagram Reels and YouTube Shorts, waiting to pounce.
Yeah, if users start having a bad experience, they're going to go somewhere else.
Yeah.
So how would Oracle even go about doing this? How do you actually separate TikTok's U.S. operations?
Well, they would have to create a whole new entity, basically, a brand new U.S.-based company with its own servers, its own engineers, its own version of the app. They'd be building a parallel universe just for U.S. users.
Wow. That sounds incredibly complicated.
It's a huge undertaking. And then there's the issue of the algorithm. Remember, that's the secret sauce. That's what makes TikTok so successful. How do you transfer that knowledge without, giving away trade secrets or intellectual property?
Right, because ByteDance isn't just going to hand over their most valuable asset.
Exactly. They'll have to find a way to give Oracle what they need to run the app, but also protect ByteDance's technology. It's a tricky situation.
And even if they manage to separate everything technically, will it really be enough to satisfy those national security concerns?
That's a good question, because some critics argue that even with Oracle in control, there's still a chance that ByteDance could exert some influence, behind the scenes.
Like how?
Well, maybe through subtle code changes, data sharing agreements, or even just by having a seat on the board.
So this deal might not be the solution everyone is hoping for.
It's definitely not a guaranteed fix. There's a lot of skepticism, and for good reason. This is totally uncharted territory.
Yeah. It feels like TikTok is stuck in this weird limbo. It's not banned, but it's not exactly welcome either.
And that uncertainty is a big problem. It's hard to attract new users, keep creators happy, and build a business when you're constantly facing the possibility of a ban or some major disruption.
So this Oracle deal, even if it works out, it might just be buying TikTok sometime.
It might.
Because the bigger issues, the concerns about data security, national interests, the role of Chinese companies, those aren't going away anytime soon.
No, they aren't. This whole situation with TikTok is really just a small part of a much bigger shift that's happening in tech. We're seeing this clash between the global nature of technology and the desire for, national control and security, and that tension is only going to get stronger.
So what can our listeners take away from all this?
Well, I think the most important thing is to stay informed.
Yeah.
Be critical of the information you're seeing. And remember that there are many different sides to this story.
Right.
There aren't any easy answers. It's complex.
Well, this has been a fascinating, but also kind of unsettling look at the future of TikTok, and maybe even the future of the internet as a whole.
Yeah, definitely.
We'll keep following this story, see what happens next. But for now, we want to hear from you. What are your thoughts? Do you think this deal is a good idea? Head over to our website and let us know. We're always interested in your perspective. And if you have any ideas for future deep dives, send them our way. Thanks for listening.